We're ready. We're ready. Ready. Barely. Oh, I love this committee. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Energy, Utilities and Technology Committee. My name is Melanie Sachs, proud to be the House Chair of EUT and to represent the wonderful community of Freeport. We will have folks introduce themselves so that we can officially have a meeting, and we appreciate. We'll start with our representative to my left.
Good afternoon. My name is Jerry Runte, and I represent parts of York and Wells, as well as the town of Algonquin.
Good afternoon, everybody. Matthew McIntyre, House District 18, representing 16 towns over portions of Penobscot, Hancock, and Washington counties.
Good afternoon, Representative Valley Geiger, District 42. I represent Rockland, most of Owl's Head, and the islands of North Haven, Cree Haven, Matinicus, and the Muscle Ridge. And I'm so sorry, but I also sit on the Labor Committee, and I am needed for some action there, so I will not be staying.
Good afternoon. I'm Steve Foster. I represent District 32, which includes the towns of Dexter, Garland, Charleston, Exeter, Stetson, and a part of Garland. And I'll only be staying for a few more days.
Good afternoon. Matt Harrington. I represent Senate District 33, 4 towns in inland York County, Alfred, Lebanon, Sanford, and Waterboro.
And Representative Kilton Webb out of Durham, House District 98.
Wonderful. And we have a few folks joining us by Zoom as well. Is Representative Paul or Warren there? Thank you, Representative Geiger. If they'd like to introduce themselves. Yeah, if you can hear, could be. Okay. So I give them the opportunity. If not, we'll go ahead and just talk about what we are doing today. We have a statutorily required review of quasi-independent state entities that we need to have done before March 1st. So I do appreciate this committee coming together to do the duties that our committee has been assigned. We will be reviewing 3 different entities today. So what we will do is first 4 different entities today, and but 2 of them are combined. The Maine Connectivity Authority and Connect Maine will go together. Efficiency Maine Trust and the Maine Municipal and Rural Electrification Cooperative Agency. So Lindsay, we are joined as always by our wonderful analyst, Lindsay Laxon, and our incredible clerk, Lynn Lacroix as well. So to get started, Lindsay, if you could do an overview of the task that is before us to review these quasi-state independent agencies.
Absolutely. So for folks in the room, you should have a packet with a lavender cover sheet and then a white packet of procedures and filings from the entities we'll be talking about today. For those members who are attending remotely, this material was sent out by email to the committee last week. So you should have these in your email. So the purpose of today's meeting is for the committee to conduct the quasi-independent state entity review. So I've given you kind of an overview of the process, but I guess primarily what is a quasi-independent state entity? Statute defines it as an organization that has been established by the legislature as an independent board, commission, or agency to fulfill governmental purposes that receives revenues that are derived in whole or in part from federal or state taxes or fees. So you've got some examples there: Finance Authority of Maine, Maine PERS, Maine State Housing Authority, and then those entities that are within the jurisdiction of EUT. So as Representative Sachs said, we've got 4 entities, but Maine Connectivity Authority and Connect Maine Authority will be combined, as Maine Connectivity Authority has advised that their report also is on behalf of Connect Maine Authority. So essentially the purpose of today's meeting will be to review the reports that were filed by these entities. They have to file them in, basically, you'll be looking at 2 years of reports. So you will have fiscal year 2025 and 2026 you will have as well. So you'll have information regarding procurements that they've made. So these would be contracts, either sole source contracts or when an agency goes out and conducts an RFP to conduct a procurement. You also have their contributions that they've made. Those are defined in statute. And I've also given you a copy of the relevant statute so you can see some of the definitions if you need it. But you will have their policies as well as those contributions that the entities have made. And then information regarding travel and meals. So compensation for those. So the reports have to be submitted by February 1st of each year. And so then in the second regular, this committee conducts this review. So what you received are a list of procurements exceeding $10,000 in the preceding year for which a competitive procurement was waived, a list of persons to which the entity made contributions greater than $1,000 in the preceding year and amounts of those contributions, and a description of changes made in the preceding year to written policies and procedures. So the committee's role today will be to review the filed reports, ask questions of the agencies as necessary to understand, for example, a waiver of competitive procurement. What was the reason for that waiver? And then, so you will be looking at their policies and procedures, and then whether the waivers of competitive procurement are in compliance with their adopted policies and whether their contributions are in compliance with their policies. And then we submit a report to GOC by March 1st. On the second page of the Lavender packet, I gave you the language from the review that was conducted in the 131st. So the committee reported to the GOC committee. After conducting the review, the committee reported it did not find any inconsistencies between the entity's policies and procedures and the applicable statutory requirements. And the committee did not find that any of the reported waivers of competitive procurement or reported contributions to be out of compliance with those policies and procedures. There's also a quick note here regarding the Maine Municipal and Rural Electrification Cooperative Agency, which we can get to in a moment once we take up that review. So essentially that's what was found in the last legislature. So when the entities submit their reports, one of the things they have to alert you to is whether they've had any changes in their procedures or their policies. So both Maine Connectivity Authority and the Efficiency Maine Trust reported some changes in their procurement procedures. So I did want to flag for the committee, you have that information in your packet for both agencies, but their policies and procedures were reviewed in the 131st. So if the committee wished to, you could limit your review of the policies and procedures in terms of their statutory compliance. You could look at just the changes that have been put into effect in the last 2 years. But then we'll walk through what each agency submitted. You'll be able to ask questions and come to a conclusion regarding whether the statutory requirements are met. And as always, if you have, follow-up information requests or something like that, this is something, if the committee doesn't sort of resolve the review today, this is something you could look at another day as well. So I'll stop there and see if anyone has any questions for me.
Any questions for Lindsay from the committee regarding our task this afternoon? Seeing none, we can go forward with the first one. So Lindsay, can I just clarify that you're trying to, this sheet, which is the statute that is being recommended, this, not the packet, but the statute, just is alerting us that this is part of our jurisdiction, correct? That's all you were doing when you flagged that. It's just saying, here are the ones that are under our purview. Here is the committee review and report about what we are supposed to be doing.
Exactly. And I think the statute is helpful in particularly the definitions. So when we start to talk about contributions, those, because they are defined, it can be helpful to understand what the universe is that the entity is reporting.
That's really helpful. So since that is one of the things about whether competitive procurement is in compliance, I can see the definition of competitive procurement and get a sense of what we're looking at. And the same thing about contributions. What do those mean? And that's there. So that's just a helpful framework for folks. And so for each entity, you'll see on your purple sheets, we're going to go through this. The first one, we'll go down the list as presented on our outline. We'll start with Maine Municipal and Rural Electrification Co-op, then we'll do Efficiency Maine Trust, and then the Maine Connectivity Authority and Connect Maine Authority. So the first one that we're going to do is open up the consideration of the Maine Municipal and Rural Electrification Cooperative Agency. So you can start on page 3. Lindsay, of course, is super organized and this is to help us remind us of these are the things that we are evaluating in this hearing specifically and broken out by which agency. So you can write at the top, the quasi-independent state agency is that MMRECA, and then today's date, which I see is the 17th. Okay, just for my own notes, this is what I'm doing today. And then I'm able to do that little checklist around was something met or something not met in each of these categories. There's a lot we can talk about for these agencies. This is specifically around the procurements and contributions and things like that, right?
Correct.
Okay. Just want to make sure we know the job that we are assigned to do, friend. Okay.
So if we are starting with Maine Municipal and Rural Electrification Cooperative Agency, in your large white packet, you will notice the filings for that agency are on pages 1 through 4. And so much like in the 131st, Maine Municipal Rural Electrification Cooperative Agency, at this time they have not adopted policies regarding vendor selection, contributions, and travel, meals, and entertainment. So I think essentially they have statutory authority to operate. They've advised the committee over multiple years that they are not in operation. But if we look at the lavender chart, so we start out with the criteria, the first one being selection of vendors. The questions the committee would answer would be, do those policies and procedures establish competitive procurement as the standard procurement method? Do these policies and procedures specify the conditions under which competitive procurement may be waived? And for procurements exceeding $10,000 that were not competitively procured, do those procedures require written justification for and evidence of approvals that those be maintained on file for 5 years? In this case, we have the agency reporting that they did not adopt policies regarding vendor selection. And that they did not make any, my understanding is they did not make any procurements. They have noted in their letter that the members of Dirigo participating in the agency fund all of the costs for their activities. They receive no state funding, but they do see inherent value in maintaining this entity, even though it has not been active in the past few years. So I guess with that covers the procurement piece. Then if we move down to the contribution policy, you would be looking for whether this policy establishes criteria to ensure that contributions are directly related to the entity's mission and activities. Required that for identification and reporting purposes, contributions are budgeted and accounted for separately from other expenditures in the entity's records. They would establish requirements for maintaining documentation to support each contribution and require that the governing body of the agency must approve the annual budget for contributions and be provided with periodic reports on contributions made by the entity. Again, they do not have any policies with regard to contributions. I also want to note, as I mentioned, the definition of contribution in statute means payments for membership dues, fees, gifts, donations, and sponsorships, including those that result in public advertisement of the entity. So that is what you are looking for.
So I have a clarifying question, if I may, Lindsay. So in their letter, for folks on the committee, I'm looking at page 4. It's the same letter they seem to generate. And for those in the 131st, it sounds like you maybe help me understand if they've asked this question. But they're saying that members of Dirigo participating in MMR ECA fund activities fund all costs with those activities. We see the contributions definition is payments for membership dues. So I'm assuming that it's free to be part of MMERCA?
That I don't know. I don't think the entity itself is actually operating. So I think what they're saying is those entities that would essentially be part of this. So the state consumer and member-owned utilities have this as a vehicle. But because there's overlap in officers, it seems like they fund their own activities and they're not actually through the agency.
Right, which is why that line was odd. Because it says participating in MMRECA activities, but we're saying they're not active.
What I can do, so Scott Hollowell was not able to be here today, but if the members do have questions, I can certainly follow up with him and information can be brought back to the committee.
Right, I don't mind that they're not active if they're not active. They have not been active in these past years, but they're funding all of their own activities. Seems to be a contradiction. And maybe again, those who are here in the 131st can help me. Representative Foster is always my phone a friend. Help me represent.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I will just say this, during communications on another bill, another issue, I had corresponded with Deborah Hart, who is the represents the COUs here in front of the committee. And she replied that she wouldn't be here today, but that they have the report that we have, which is not much there. And this is something that I don't know if we learned this in 131st or not, but she says this entity has not been employed by the COUs, which I take to read they don't pay them anything, but that they have continued to advocate, the COUs have continued to advocate to keep it on the books in the event there might be a future need, which I think that can be interpreted as what this letter also says, that they, although they're not really doing anything, they want to stay, I guess, as is in case there's need in the future. So in answer to, I think there is no dues being paid or anything like that by the COUs at this time. But I think
Totally understand that. It's just that is a very concerning line. If the members of Derigo participating in MMRECA activities fund all the costs of those activities, however, it is not active. So are you funding and doing the activities, or are you not active? That is my entire question.
apparently, and this is something maybe we can follow up on, but apparently they have no activities.
Well, then don't say you're funding the activity. Anyone else who is in the 100th, Representative Rente? Phone a friend. Oh,
Speculation, perhaps what they're saying is they do fund their activities when they have activities, but they're not having activities.
and if they ever had activities, though, they would have to have these policies in place. That is all I'm saying. Like their justification for not putting any policies in place is because they haven't engaged in associated activities. So maybe it's the associated activities at the end of that letter I need to think about, is they're not doing any of these. They're doing activities that have nothing to do with procurement or contribution. Is that where the way this committee sees it? You know what I'm saying? This what?
This is something where I could certainly follow up with Scott to request clarification regarding when he says these activities, what exactly is that? Are these activities of the agency? If he could just clarify what the agency is currently doing and how any of these activities are funded.
I'm assuming what they meant to say was in MMRECA activities not associated with this report or something like that. Like, I think they're talking about, like you said, they do things, but they're not subject to this review, which is not the rabbit hole I want to go in at all. And I want to be very clear about that. I just wanted clarification on that one line. And they may want to change that for their next iteration. I will not be chairing EUT. However, one might want to just clarify the line. I don't know that it's enough to not pass their review today, but I just wanted to put that out there. Representative Foster.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I would add that we might also get clarification on if they do in the future have activities, how that will be funded. I believe the COUs would fund that, but I'm not 100% sure of that.
They would be required to have a policy in place that we would review. That's how it would happen. So I'm sorry to go down that. I truly didn't understand. I think it just means associated activities, but it seems a little odd. All right, and that's only on agency 1, contribution policy number 2. Yes, Representative McIntyre.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In addition to clarifying that, there's a line in here that causes me pause, not necessarily concern, but pause. I would seek further explanation as to why Derigo sees an inherent value in maintaining an inactive organization. I need to understand, because when you have too many layers, things can happen. Thank you.
So that was the contribution policy. Shall we move on to the travel, meals, and entertainment policy?
Okay, and for the final element, again, the entity has reported that they don't have policies and procedures for this, but what you would be looking for is whether the policies limit travel, meals, and entertainment costs to those reasonable and necessary for accomplishing the entity's mission and activities, whether those policies describe the persons for whom the entity will pay travel, meal, and entertainment costs and specify the conditions under which those costs will be paid. The policies must establish requirements for supporting documentation documentation of such costs paid directly or through reimbursement. Question of whether they require identification and require for identification and reporting purposes that travel, meal, and entertainment costs are budgeted and accounted for separately from other expenditures in the entity's records, and require that the governing body must approve the annual budget for travel, meal, and entertainment costs and be provided with periodic reports on actual costs paid directly or reimbursed. And on this one, the entities don't actually have to submit for the past 2 years their travel, meals, and entertainment costs. It's just the policy piece for that.
Right.
But again,
I'm assuming that's more what they were talking about. They pay for their associated activities
Oh,
on
maybe.
their own. That would make more sense under this. Rather, I started it with contribution, but because they don't specify again, hard to know. Which begs Representative McIntyre's question around if you're paying for all the things and doing activities, but not needing a policy because we're all self-funding, but we're actually doing activities. One would suggest perhaps some policies in place. Any other thoughts or information around this particular one? So Lindsay, if we do have questions, should we just put a pause on this one and then invite them to come in? What do you suggest from past?
I think it's up to you. Given the scope of the questions that you're asking, I think it may make sense to just sort of put a pause on this one, get those answers back, and maybe we can get Scott to be available, if not in person, via Zoom
Yeah,
for a
that would be
subsequent meeting. So then you'd have something ideally that you could look over in front of you before the meeting, and then he can answer any follow-up questions.
Okay. Does that feel like the pleasure of the council of the committee to table this for the moment? We don't need to take a real vote, just a nod vote's fine with me. Thank you. Appreciate that. And now Efficiency Main Trust is like, wait, what? You're going to be talking about what? So if we could move on then to and we'll invite Michael Stoddard to come on up. This may be more helpful. Mr. Stoddard, if we have you here, as we go through each section. This actually, I think, will be a little easier because there are policies and some things to look at. So we will do the review now of Efficiency Main Trust, and we welcome up the director, Michael Stoddard. Thank you for being here.
Good afternoon.
So Lindsay's just going to start us through with noting a few things, and then we can certainly ask Mr. Stoddard any questions as well.
Okay, so just to note in your packet, the Efficiency Main Trust materials start on page 43. So you've got the 2025 filing on page 43 and the 2026 filing on page 47. And then toward the back of your packet, you've got the current procedures. I will note the packet I printed did not include all of the Efficiency Main Trust materials. There was, I believe it's an employee handbook, which is very large. I have a copy with me if folks need to see it, but that was also distributed by email.
If you're having trouble sleeping.
So starting out, so the committee will want to look at policies and procedures regarding the selection of vendors. As I noted earlier, the trust reported no changes to their policies and procedures in 2025. However, in 2026, they did report a change to the establishment of a federal funds procurement policy. So that is included in your packet. And so that might be something the committee would want to take a look at. Is this a new policy and procedure, which has been set up? So that is up to the committee. But I guess to start us off, we look at the selection of vendors. And so you will see all of the waivers of competitive procurement reported in the last 2 years. You will see those on pages, it's 43. Was the first.
$45 perhaps,
There we go.
Yeah.
43.
at least in ours. I think it's 45.
There we go. Yes, you've got the cover letter, which starts on 43. On page 45, you've got the 2024 report. And so this provides that you've got, so sole source procurements, none. And then contract additions made in fiscal year 2024 to existing contracts which had previously waived competitive procurement. Those are listed for
You are
you.
looking at last year's report.
It's 2 years worth of filings.
I see.
Yep. So we've got the first, and then we'll move on to the 2026 one.
Question, Lindsay? Yeah.
No, it's good. There's so many pages.
Mhm.
I would much rather be sure because there would be a good chance I could pull one here. So, and then we've got, those are broken out by public information outreach, administrative. And then we get into contributions, but let's stop here
Mhm.
with the selection of vendors. So the questions the committee will want to look at would be competitive procurement as a standard procurement method, conditions for waivers, and then for those that exceeded $10,000. Was written justification and evidence maintained for 5 years, and then were the procurements in compliance with policy and procedures.
Right, so we're basically for this year, so there's going to be 2 years, we're going to look at the next one next, but on page 45, basically, the next page, 46, talks about contributions. So this is on procurements only, and you reference where the report of their procedure is on a different page, correct? There, because what we're trying to see is, is competitive procurement in their policies, the standard procurement method, and then under which conditions it may be waived. You're here showing us which one was sole source, which one was waived. Where is the actual policy that it underpins?
So I think if you look on page 52 of the packet, that's where you will see the, starting on page 51, going to page 52,
Mhm.
the general procurement policy for the trust.
Mhm.
And then the,
If I might, there were no changes to be reported in the FY24 reports. The changes didn't show up until this past year, so they don't show up until the 2026 FY26 report, which is why I was looking at a different one.
Right,
And
and
that is summarized in a paragraph on the cover page. It's a very short memorialization of a statement that we will follow all the applicable federal requirements. And so now that is in writing as opposed to just in practice.
yeah, and I appreciate that. Happily, you're our first one, so it's great for the committee to just know again, this is the thing that we're doing, which is, are the procurements that you see on page 45, are they following the procedures on page 52? That is sort of your mirror. And it's, again, they haven't changed. These were reviewed in the 31st. These are just the reports of, this is what we did within those. So our questions being, do you have a procurement policy? Boom. Does it say that it's competitive is the procurement method? Boom. And then specify the conditions under which the competitive procurement may be waived, because here you do see some that were waived. So does that follow the policy? Not what it was spent on, but did you follow your policy? And then, if not, why? So that is the full scope of what we're doing at the moment on this particular review. So does that make sense? And do we have any questions about that? Representative Foster and then Representative McIntyre.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Director Stoddard, for being here. So one thing that has changed since the 131st and the 2023 report is the state auditor did a finding that quite a few state agencies have had many contracts and awards made without competitive bidding. So you have a fairly short list here. And you state that these were previously waived, the ones that you list under A2 were previously waived, but these are additions to those. So I just thought if you could just walk down through those 5 items and just give us a quick, here's what it is and why we think it should have been not competitively bid, the addition piece to what was already waived.
Can I just clarify if you're looking at the FY20?
I'm looking at page 45.
Is that 24, 25? Thank you. Thank you.
And so at line A2 states that these had previously been waived. But then these additions were made to something that was already waived. So I'm guessing
Yeah.
that the reasoning was, well, if it was already waived, it didn't have to be didn't have to go through the regular procurement process. So I'm just wondering if you would just step through those 5 items and
Yes.
explain.
Yes, gladly. Thank you for the question. As the committee knows, we have a strategic plan that we use to implement all our programs called the Triennial Plan. Comes around, as the name suggests, once every 3 years, and once it gets approved by our board and the commission, that gives us our blueprint for what we're going to do for the next 3 years. We don't, however, in many cases, when we start a contract with somebody, we'll only do them in 1-year increments. Or we'll budget them in a 1-year increment, even though we may have done made a commitment or intending to use a vendor for the entire 3-year period. So anything that's over the threshold amount we go to our board if we think we're not going to use a competitive process. So I don't remember what we spent in FY 24. I know in FY 25, we spent over $100 million of funds. And so everything except what you see on this page was competitively procured. The things that are on this list are things that are not well suited to competitive bidding. So I'm going to skip 2A for a second and come back to it, but the second 2A under administrative, like the Meadow Park development, that's our office space that we're in a multi-year lease in. The same is true for the Dana Wart Mill. That was a smaller office space, satellite space that we had in Westbrook. The Perkins Thompson Legal is the firm that reviews all of our contracts and all of our commercial work. So those are their legal bills. And then Tyler Technologies is the firm that manages to which we subscribe for our whole big project database that we've been using for 15 years. So rather than, not that we wouldn't occasionally consider rebidding, those are all ongoing activities that we may be under a longer term contract for, but that year's budget amount was effectively a sole source. So those are examples of prior commitments that we re-upped. The Google AdWords is the single most cost-effective way we have to reach tens of thousands of Maine consumers with information about energy products, and opportunities to take advantage of incentives through our programs. They are very targeted. We can limit them only to people who are in Maine, not who have, are parachuting in from outside of Maine, and they are very effective in reaching consumers who are very close to making some kind of a purchasing decision, which characterizes a lot of the purchasing decisions we are trying to influence them on. There just isn't anything else like Google AdWords that has the same reach and the same ability to pinpoint the recipients. So notwithstanding the fact that it's a pretty large sum, there is just no other way to do that thing. We can't put it out to bid and say, who else wants to try and replicate what those folks do? So that is the rationale for why those are the subject of sole source arrangements. But each of them was approved by a vote of the board after a full review.
Right, and I just want to clarify, the thing we are here to do is to make sure that your Board of Trustees approve the waiver and that that decision to waive the competitive procurement process is recorded and maintained in your files, right?
Yes.
So that is what we are here to determine if they have done those things. That's on page 53. Thank you. Representative Foster, did you have a follow-up?
Yes, and just thank you, Director Stoddard. You brought back memories from the 131st and the discussions we had on, I think at that time you were changing office lease space, and we had quite a long conversation about that. So thank you.
Representative McIntyre.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Stoddard, for being here. I'm just trying to make sure I understand. In your opening statement, you stated, for referencing page 49, so that we're all from the same sheet of music. I believe you used the word memorialize, that in your cover letter, you indicated you are adopting new policies in alignment with federal standards for when you're using federal dollars, correct?
We did that, yes.
So where in the remainder, because I see a copy of your procurement policy, which appears to be dated, page 53, appears to be dated 2018, March 28th. Does this packet, did I miss it? Does it have the current policies?
The attachments that, I don't know how Lindsay sent it to you, but if you got the email that I sent her with all of the policies, it's in there. It's one of them that is in there, but it's not, you have to read them together. They're not, they haven't been merged together into a single document, if that's what you're asking.
So I think what you have in your packet, the procedures that Michael provided by email, I asked for all of the sort of relevant current procedures. So
Current.
when you see the EMT procurement policy version 2018, I think that's reflecting the fact this is still the current
That is-
policy.
Yes, that is correct.
So this is what they're using, but then as well, they did adopt a federal policy. So this is federal funds procurement policy that starts on page 55.
55. Thank you.
So the two, I think, operate in tandem.
Okay. Quick follow. Thank you for pointing that out, and I'll re-review this a little bit later. Can you tell me from your understanding, if you are now adopting this into your policies, was there any inclusion of the focus on source selection teams, SSTs, and the need for them to be independent of perhaps your organizational board, where you bring in outside folks to look at the bids?
We did not include a provision on that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So bringing us back to the review under policies. So we just did the 2024. Did you want to do 2025, Lindsay, for that top section? How did you want this set up? Do you want to do the 24 in all three categories or the 25 in all?
It might make sense to look at the procurements that were reported in the report that was filed in January. So essentially looking at the selection of vendors piece and the procurements piece for both filings first, and then we move on to contributions.
So we're on to page 49 then
Okay.
for, yeah, okay. So we just did either questions for page 45. That was the first of fiscal year 24. Now we're on fiscal year 25 on page 49, where there was now a federal procurement policy as referenced by our good representative from Lowell. And then many of the same ones that were not competitively bid as sole source.
They're all the same but one.
Mhm.
The first one is a law firm in Washington, DC that we joined 4 or 5 other states in securing their services to help represent us in the preparation of a contract that came out of one of these big federal grants, that we were one of the states that was awarded. And it was a lengthy contracting process, and there were some very technical issues that were in question, and this firm specialized in those. So we joined the other states and split the cost with them to help represent us. So that was a one-time thing, and that would not be recurring.
So the questions are the same as for the other one. Do you have a procurement method? This conditions under competitive procurement, and then for those exceeding 10,000 or 25,000, depending on the thing, do we have, and we'll ask the same to Mr. Stoddard on Mike, for those that were not competitively procured for any reason, with the written justification in your files for 5 years, and did you have a board vote for those?
I can attest that the answer to all of those questions is yes.
Thank you. Other questions for Lindsay or Mr. Stoddard on this area? Representative Foster?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Director Stoddard, just out of curiosity, the grant or award that you were given for the expenditure that required the expenditure of $27,000, would you know offhand what size that was for Efficiency Main Trust?
$25 million.
Okay. See no other questions or comments on that selection of vendors. We'll go into contribution policy. Lindsay.
Okay. So next up, we were looking at contribution policy. So if you look at the trust report on page 46, they have provided a list of all persons who received contributions greater than $1,000 in fiscal year 2024. So they had reported no individuals, and then association sponsorships, they've reported one, and then multiple association memberships. So the question would be regarding their policies. Now, there were no changes to their contribution policies over the last 2 years. But those, I believe you can find on page 53. So these are addressed in the procurement policy. So you can take a look at what is listed there, but you'd want to ensure that criteria are established to ensure contributions are directly related to the entity's mission and activities, that they require for identification and reporting purposes, contributions to be budgeted and accounted for separately from other expenditures, that the policies establish requirements for maintaining documentation for each contribution and require the governing body to approve the annual budget for contributions and provide periodic reports on contributions made by the entity. Any questions from the committee? Sure. Okay, so no questions on those. That was the fiscal year 2024 report. If we turn to fiscal year 2025 on page 50, you have the contributions reported for the second year. So again, no contributions to individuals, but there was an association sponsorships and several association memberships.
Questions, members? Senator Harrington.
I'm just curious about the amounts. Why are the different membership amounts different? How are they determined?
In the association memberships,
Yeah.
typically what happens is these. So I think it's true in every one of these. No, not in every case, but looking at the first one, for example, usually what happens is Maine is assessed a pro rata share based either on population or the amount of energy that we consume relative to the other states that are participating in whatever this group thing is, this association. So that is definitely true for Reggie. That's just Maine's pro rata share of whatever their total admin costs are for that organization. Then you can see the other ones that are a flat number. In some cases, they have sort of a de minimis membership. And so we always choose whatever the lowest one is. I think the AESP, the Association of Energy Service Professionals, looks to me again like sort of a pro rata share. The Consortium for Energy Efficiency, again, is based on our state population size compared to the relative to the other organizations that are in it.
Oh. Thank you.
And again, question to ask Director Stoddard is these were as part of your annual budget voted on by your board.
They were.
Any other questions for Director Stoddard or for Lindsay on this section of contributions? Okay, moving on to the next page.
Okay, and lastly, we have travel, meals, and entertainment policy. So the policies, the question would be, do they limit travel, meal, and entertainment costs to those that are reasonable and necessary for accomplishing the entity's mission and activities? Describe the persons who will pay travel, meal, and entertainment costs, and specify the conditions under which those costs will be paid. Establish requirements for supporting documentation and approval of travel, meal, and entertainment costs. Require for identification and reporting purposes that these costs are budgeted and accounted for separately from other expenditures in the entity's records, and require that the governing body must approve the annual budget for travel, meal, and entertainment costs and be provided periodic reports on actual costs paid directly or reimbursed. So the committee may wish to take a look at, so some of this is addressed in the procurement policy. So if you want to take a look at page 53 at the bottom, there's a section governing travel, meals, and entertainment. So the committee may wish to take a look at that and see if they have any questions or concerns regarding the statutory requirements. And I would also note Efficiency Main Trust has a specific travel policy. The travel manual, which starts on page 75 of your packet. And so the real meat of it gets pages 78 and 79 may be useful as well. But for this element, the entity doesn't actually have to report any of the last 2 years' travel, meals, and entertainment expenses. So it's limited to just the policy.
And may I just inquire, Director Stoddard, have there been any updates since the 131st?
Not to this policy, no.
Not to the policies, not just on travel, but on meals and entertainment?
Correct.
Okay. And I'm assuming that the board has also approved the budget for these.
That's correct.
Questions from the committee regarding this section? Seeing none, thank you. Is there anything else on this review of the Efficiency Main Trust?
So I think the question would be, is the committee, if you don't need more information, or do you have any additional questions, or are you prepared to find, or did you want more time? Because if you wanted to sort of come to conclusions about whether the entity is, policies and procedures are in
Consistent.
accordance with the statute, and then the waivers of competitive procurement and contributions were in accordance with those procedures. That is something the committee could find today if you wished.
Right, and so after every agency review, I was going to pause, ask the committee, again, looking at page 2 of 8, the results of review of EMT. Are you comfortable with the language that is there? After conducting its review, the committee reported that everything was in accordance. So discussion committee, does that feel like they have met the threshold for which we were charged for that review? Saying yes, yes, yes. Yeah, okay, good. Thank you. I think we are comfortable with that. Thank you, Director Stoddard, for your time this afternoon. Okay, so we will go on to our third and final review for Maine Connectivity Authority and Connect Me together. We'd like to invite up Andrew Butcher, or either one, or both. And again, just very targeted review for these two entities, just around these 3 sections. So we appreciate you being here today.
Okay, so for Maine Connectivity Authority, you will note that you've got the 2025 and 2026 reports in your packet. So let's start with the 2025 report, which is the substance starts on page 7. So you will note that in the 3rd paragraph, Maine Connectivity Authority reported it updated its procurement policy for organizational growth and the transition of roles. So there was a change on that policy. The letter explains under this revised policy, MCA managers have authority to approve expenses up to $25,000. MCA directors and senior managers have authority to approve expenses up to $100,000. And the president and director of finance and operations have the authority to approve expenses up to $250,000. And any expenditure greater than $250,000 requires full board of directors or executive committee approval. So the authority has reported that to us. So the requirements, well, actually, let's move on to what was reported for procurements exceeding $10,000 where competitive procurement was waived. It's at the bottom of page 8, start of page 9. So the authority has given you a list of those procurements. And so I guess I will stop there for now.
Yeah. Thank you. And committee, is it helpful to ask Mr. Butcher, welcome, Director of Maine Connectivity Authority. Is it helpful, committee, for him to go through those as well as you did Representative Foster and McIntyre? If you don't mind, you've seen it done, Mr. Butcher, if you don't mind. On page 9, you have a list of those that were, so there's quite a few though, folks. Do you want, I see them greater than 1,000. Do we want to just what is the pleasure of the committee? Representative Foster.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I think what I'm looking at is a total of 11 items, which are the ones that procurements exceeding $10,000 and prior to June 30th of 2024 on page 9, top of the page. The rest are contributions. So, Director Butcher, you heard my question. You were here and heard the question I had or the concern I had that I raised with Director Stoddard. And if you could go through those 11 items and just explain, similar to what he did, on why those procurements were not put out for bid.
Absolutely. Thank you for your question. Good to see you all. Just to confirm that I am
Eight. It's
eight.
eight.
Okay.
Okay, yes.
I was like,
Page 9.
because
There
I
are
see
eight.
page 9
I
on the
know.
other
Yeah,
page
don't do it.
3.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
so we're all on the same page. So the 10,000, this is just on the procurement piece right now, not the contributions. Thank you for
Yep.
that clarification. Thank you.
Got it.
Take it away.
Great. Going from top to bottom, expenditure to Baker Newman Noise had been a procurement following a competitive procurement that developed an IT roadmap. This was an expenditure that built from that action plan to develop effectively a new electronic record procurement program, our ERP, as we updated our financial management software. Our goal was to stand that up as quickly as possible. Board reviewed the IT action plan and approved expenditure for implementation of the ERP system. Moving, happy to receive questions as folks want. Otherwise, I'll just keep going through the list. Ookla provides speed test data and was procured, that was within our procurement threshold, not requiring competitive bid. It was procured, it was an industry best practice and data set that was used to update and inform the most recent map of the broadband fabric used to develop the BEAD subgrantee selection process. Carshaft, also a vendor selected. Oh, I'm sorry, pardon me.
Thank you. Not only can I count, but I might lose this thought if I don't ask it now. So the change in the policy, as I recall, was made in the fourth quarter of 24. And on page 7. And these expenditures were made before the fourth quarter of 24. I believe. I'm not 100% sure what your previous limits were, but
Yes. So the fourth quarter of MCA's fiscal year being June. So your question,
well, so you just stated that the Ookla $43,500 expenditure was within the guidelines. And I'm just wondering if that, and your answer may be that fourth quarter is actually in June, but
fourth
that
quarter,
didn't quite
yes.
line up with what I read and then what you just said. So that was just my only question is maybe that's just needs a little explanation on that fourth quarter of FY24.
I don't recall when the Ookla procurement was in 2024 and whether that was before or after the policy update. What I do recall is that the 40,000 was within the threshold of procurement regardless.
Okay, because we don't have that information
And
here. Thank you.
I do apologize if I missed something. In our packet sent, I'm not seeing that we included our full financial policy procedure. If that is something that isn't available or on record, happy to make it available. It is on our website, but happy to share it and or refer to it in conversation today. Helpful.
That's fine.
Yeah. Can I just clarify? We do have on page 11, your financial and procurement policy.
Okay,
Is
good.
that what you're referring to? And-
That is it.
Okay.
Great.
And
I
so
was
that-
surprised that I didn't see it in my.
Yeah.
but,
And so the question being is prior to April, May, or June of 2024, yeah, correct?
Mhm.
Your fiscal year 24, the end, not calendar, but your fiscal, that this was within your policy states greater than 10,000, but less than 50,000, that you must obtain quotations or estimates for 3 qualified sources. In the last fiscal year, you changed it, or the last quarter of your fiscal year, you changed that so that that 40,000 would just be okay by MCA directors and senior managers.
Correct.
So you're saying that, I'm assuming that UCLA, the preceding year, that somehow that 43,500 came at the end of your fiscal year after you changed the policy. Is that what I'm hearing?
That would make sense, and that tracks with when the Audit and Risk Committee approves updates to the financial policies and procedures.
Does that help? Representative Foster? Okay, thank you. Okay, continuing on then with the explanation of those 8 items, we were on UCLA.
Thank you. Okay, CarShop's also a vendor selected with the support from Baker Newman Noyes for implementation of an updated CRM for Salesforce. That also needed to be stood up in short order to complement our BEAD subgrantee selection process. Questions? Great. Outside Angle is a vendor competitively procured, I believe, in 2022 to assist with organizational development, HR, strategy and management, and organizational planning. Those reports are provided to MCA's board. And procurement, again, stem from a 2021-22 procurement. Lincoln Institute provides support with geospatial data and visualization, has provided the assistance and platform to be able to provide in real-time perspective and information on a range of different progress metrics. That is also a competitive procurement from, I don't recall the year, but had been either 22 or 23. And was an ongoing vendor relationship needed to support our mapping, which again was key to BEAD subgrantee selection process. Tilson Technology stems from a 2022 competitive procurement and a master service agreement. That scope of work provides effectively a verification validation process for subgrantees after implementation of build to ensure that what has been proposed has been completed with the technology in the places where it should be. KMA HR Consulting is providing support as both a HR vendor with updating employee guidebook, employee handbook, employee procedures, and employee recruitment. That was a competitive procurement stemming from 2022 as well. Bernstein Scher had been provided legal assistance in the development of a construction vendor services contract with a competitively procured vendor in support of MCA's Middle Mile Initiative, MooseNet. That had been made upon recommendation of council to ensure added technical assistance with the completion of a $19 million construction contract.
Questions for the committee? Representative Webb and then Senator Harrington.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you help me understand like what the differences are between Outside Angle and KMA? It sounds like they both are human resources.
Good question. Human resources and organizational development. KMA is more nuts and bolts of HR policy. They effectively serve as until end of 2025, MCA did not have dedicated HR staff. KMA served as outsourced KMA staff. In contrast, Outside Angle has provided support with the development and management of our triennial plan, organizational planning, staff planning, leadership support. We produce a twice-a-year strategic plan for board review and approval. Outside Angle provides support and assistance with that.
And what KMA are like, they don't offer the same thing, so you're forced to use two different
That's
services.
right. KMA's subject matter expertise has been purely human resources explicit. Subject matter and organizational familiarity is more of a unique attribute of Outside Angle.
Thank you.
Senator Harrington, you were next. Representative Foster.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I think I asked this question in 131st, so just refresh my memory, but my recollection is that one of the reasons you have to use these two firms is because the current HR, if you will, and state government doesn't have the capacity to transfer or put together the handbook and those kind of things for your purposes.
Good question. Yes, I believe you did ask a similar question. I want to be cautious in my response. I don't know that I can represent whether it would likely be the Department of Administrative Financial Services that would provide additional HR and staffing support. I can't speak to whether they would have capacity or not. One of the joys and challenges of MCA starting from scratch in 2022 has been, of course, standing up all aspects of organizational and administrative infrastructure. We coordinate quite closely with DAFs on a number of fronts. MCA's board direction was that MCA's internal systems and controls needed to be unique to MCA.
Okay, again, other questions? I have one. I just want to know how, again, I keep going back to the purple sheet, Lindsay. This is the problem we're trying to solve here. The intersection of your updated approval process and your procurement process, right? So do you still go through the procedures, say on page 12 for procurements based on the amounts? Is it that your approval process is what has been updated? Do you still go through the procurement process as outlined? But it's just the approval. So it no longer needs the full board vote. It now can be by a subset.
Yes.
Okay.
And I believe the most notable update made to the process was changing the title from a chief financial officer to a finance and operations director, as our CFO transitioned at the end of 2024, and MCA hired a finance and operations director, and hence needed to update our policies and procedures.
Right. And so just as I asked Director Stoddard on mic, you have all of the, as they say, you have the documentation for any approvals that you have done that were not board or as well as board. You have documentation around the procurements within the guidelines on page 12 and then their subsequent approvals.
Yes.
Yes.
And I'm happy to elaborate if useful. Short
No,
answer is
just
yes.
this has been a yes or no. As Lindsay and I discussed beforehand, we don't actually, I guess we could ask to prove that and bring a sample, but we don't, we just have to rely on sort of the public record of you're doing the thing you said you're doing. And here are your policies and are you following the policies? Representative McIntyre.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Butcher, for being here today. Regarding policies, I believe we've just learned you received 49 million federal dollars. Is that correct? Is that confirmed?
We are plan to receive and deploy 49 million has been confirmed.
Okay, so looking through the policies here and reflecting back on the conversation with Mr. Stoddard, I didn't see any specific policy inclusion regarding expenditure of federal dollars. Is that, am I just missing it?
Not sure I understand your question.
in the policies implemented by EMT, there was the initial infusion of following federal requirements for spending federal dollars. Do you have similar?
MCA's, since the vast majority of MCA's procurement and expenditures utilize federal funds, our policy was developed in line with federal guidelines and requirement. So I would say yes, and we do not have a specific federal versus non-federal procurement policy.
Thank you.
Along those lines, Mr. Butcher, are you independently audited? Or
Yes,
do you use the state auditor or independent audit?
we are independently audited.
And they have not, I note to Representative McIntyre's question, they developed it for the trust because of their compliance with federal law. And so it was a recommendation by their auditor. Yours has not given any such guidance. Is that my understanding?
That's correct.
Just wanted to clarify that. Okay. Any other questions around competitive procurements? That was just for FY 24. And now we're going to FY 25.
So if you want to turn to page 26 of your packet, that is where you will find the 2026 filing and a list of procurements exceeding $10,000 where competitive procurement was waived.
Representative Foster, do you need Ms. Director Butcher to go through those as well? Or are you satisfied with where you've been?
No, I don't think so. I guess, if you might touch on the one or two that are above the new limits that were added into the policy. For example, 529,000, I think is it may be the only one that's above 250. One at the bottom, 709.
Yep.
Again, that's angle, but.
Yep.
Thank you.
And that would be approved by your board still? in
Yes.
This current policy, yeah.
Yep. Absolutely happy to speak to those. One fun fact, between fiscal year 24 and 25, MCA's total expenditures were approximately 23 million in 2024, approximately 63 million in 2025. Which speaks to in part a increase of number of vendors in general. To your specific questions, that scope of work, I believe you're referencing to Baker Newman Noise, was ongoing support again to MCA's IT steering committee and attendance to an IT roadmap with direct support to both the implementation of our ERP system and the CRM system. These procurements continue to be in attendance with the new requisition policy, new requisition process inherent to our new ERP, which goes before staff approval and then ultimately board approval.
Follow-up, Representative?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So, outside angle at 709,000, which is significantly more than what the year before was at 350,000. What is the reason that went up so much for what I think you described as their services?
That is, I'd like to actually get back to you on that, if that is okay. In part because, quite frankly, I would imagine that the numbers were inverse on that, and I'm a little worried there was a version control on the table. So, if I may, I'd like to get back to you and confirm.
I'll also note though, for all of these, you have documentation around
Yes.
this. Because again, we're not talking about what you spent the money on. It's whether you followed your procedures. And so I just want to make sure again that we have on record that you have all of the documentation, either of board approval or of senior manager or whatever the level might be. And the vendors, your procurement process of selection of vendors and or not, and written reasons why.
Every vendor has a procurement cover memo developed by staff, approved by leadership, brought forward to board committee, and then ultimately board for approval.
Thank you. Okay, so set with that section, we're going to move on to contribution policy.
Okay, so moving on to contribution policy, if you want to take a look at page 9 of your packets. This lists the first reports filing for contributions greater than $1,000. And this includes all persons and entities and individuals to which the Connectivity Authority made contributions. I do want to note my understanding, and Andrew can correct me if I'm wrong, is that these are all grants. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So as you may recall, the definition of contribution is much broader than that. But what the authority is reporting are just grants for that first year.
So these are grants that you've given to these entities, right?
Correct.
So it's a weird definition of contribution, but you have to put them because it's still a grant. Any questions from the committee on page 9 through the top of page 10? Representative McIntyre.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Which year are we reviewing now? I've lost track.
That's a great check-in. We're now on the purple sheet. We're on 7 of 8 doing contribution policy. And so page 9, we're on fiscal year 2024
So just
Yeah,
that, just fiscal 24 then?
Yeah.
Okay.
for grant programs because the definition means payment for things like dues, fees, donations, scholarships, but also grants. Like your contribution.
Well, I might skip.
The definition does not explicitly say grants, but this is what MCA reported. But so I wanted to flag that for you because perhaps, given that the definition includes gifts, that may.
Yeah.
So
Oh, that's me.
Gifts and grants are a very different thing. So looking to Mr. Butcher to explain why they're noted. Grants versus gifts. Why they are included in this review.
Well, I think one thing, sorry to jump in, but the definition of contributions, payments for membership dues and fees, gifts, donations and sponsorships, including those result in public advertisement of the entity. So there's a number of items that are in that category. Grants are not specifically identified. I can't speak to why they're included, but just wanted to flag that.
So these are, for all intents and purposes, so the majority of these are either grants made to regional and Wabanaki partners in support of both regional scale broadband digital equity planning and implementation, and or ISPs in direct support of implementation and deployment of broadband work. The contracts that are developed with them are, as they utilize federal funds as a federal grant and or contract, were included here to provide transparency of expenditures, I would assume, as meeting the definition of contributions and gifts. And I think our intent, if anything else, would have been just to provide an overview of full expenditures.
I would just encourage you to figure out if you need to for contributions. I don't know if that's just because there is an element of if they talk about how they got it, maybe as part of their advertising, but I thought it looks a little different than my understanding of what the definition of contribution was. I'm sure you all have checked that out with somebody, but I'm happy to take or for other folks to chime in. When I saw that part, it was odd to me that was included as a contribution under the definition of contributions.
I think
Just a comment.
I think from
I don't
a
think you did it wrong. It's just a comment, it's odd. It was just odd to me.
that is helpful feedback. I think our finance, compliance and reporting team, I think take it pretty seriously to be able to share the range of expenditures, and I think list of contributions probably was the primary lens with which information is shared.
Right,
So if it's
extensive
an
public
overshare,
average, yeah. No, it's fine. We love the oversharing, it's fine. Anyway, other questions by the committee?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And of course, that I guess raises the question, so there were no gifts or other expenditures under the definition that's in the policy that were made. These are all grants. Is that correct?
Just double checking and reviewing, and my answer is yes.
Lindsay, can you point us to where the contributions policy, again, we're trying to do policy. Did you follow your policies around contributions?
I'm actually going to need Mr. Butcher's help for this. As to where in the authorities procedures, we find language governing,
Contributions.
yes.
I too am looking at our financial policies and procedures.
And while Mr. Butcher is looking for that information, the procedures, I did want to flag for the committee. I had asked about the contributions reported for the last 2 years' reports. And as Mr. Butcher confirmed in the first year's report, they were all grants, no contributions within, no other items that would be within the meaning of the statute. When we get to it and we look at what was filed for 2026, this is on page 20, starting on page 26. We have several pages of, these are also grants with the exception of one of them. So I just wanted to flag that for you that when we get to that item, there is one which is not in fact a grant.
Which one is that, Lindsay, just so I can circle it?
That is, if you look on page 27, generational NOR sponsorship.
Yes.
And that is, and in its title is the fact it's a sponsorship.
That's what I was thinking for. So, any luck, Mr. Butcher?
The the do not see specific language around contributions as distinct. MCA is established page 4 of the financial policies and procurements. MCA has established approval limits by position for the authorization of sub-recipient grant disbursements. Let me happy to keep digging now and or follow up with either reference or updates as need be.
Right. And I think that's what I would encourage having, if you may have it already, and I certainly did not do a deep dive in these materials last night, and I apologize for that. What I'm looking for, again, our one charge is, does your contribution policy match your activity, right? And so in absence of finding a specific, I'd like to know what you're referencing as your contribution policy. I'm referencing the definition, which I see on page 26. The sponsorship indeed would match the contribution definition in statute. So for me, that is the thing. You do a lot of reporting around, as you said, full transparency around financial expenditures in other things. Right now, we're just doing this thing,
Yes.
which is around contribution policy, procurement policies, election of vendors. So I would encourage, if you don't have a contributions policy, if you do, please let us know what that is. And then in future reports, again, appreciate the sharing, but wonder if it could be more targeted for future reports. If anything, you've given us excellent thoughts, but I do not see an actual contribution policy.
I appreciate that. Thank you for the feedback. I think the probably closest thing in our financial policies and procedures, MCA has established approval, section 12. MCA has established approvals by position for the execution of contracts and extension of amendments to contract when applicable, as per expense authorization approval limits above any contract over 250,000 will have to be approved by the board of directors. So I will go back and clarify and provide update accordingly. I think part of the challenge here is that the majority of MCA's the entirety of MCA's expenditures are predominantly direct grants and contracts. So contributions and or gifts, I do believe yeah, I will update and clarify.
Exactly that because if you're members of any organizations, much like AMT.
Yep.
Which I do think are distinct in what the statute is requiring versus grants. Although I do see the caution, it appears the cautionary thing is the public advertisement of the entity, which I completely understand why you had. So to clarify that within a contributions policy or something like that would again, if you see an EMT, they say receive contributions as defined in 12/021. So that would just be maybe a thought
Yes.
to clarify your own policy. Representative McIntyre.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With latitude, I'd like to bounce back and forth a little bit between 24 and 25, fiscal 24 and 25, just for clarification, while we're in this contribution/grant thread of discussion. Mr. Butcher, page 9 of your listing of the contributions/grants. Consolidated Communication Enterprise Services, 10 million and change. Page 27.
Sorry,
19.
so 25, page 9? Is that-
Yeah, if we're working from the same packet, sorry.
Yep.
Page 9. Bottom chart. Sixth line down, Consolidated Communication Enterprise Services, 10.5 million
Mhm.
in fiscal 24.
Mhm.
And then bouncing forward I'm sorry.
Okay.
Page 27,
Mhm.
Consolidated Communications, 19 million.
Yes.
Can you just shed some light on the near doubling from fiscal to fiscal?
Would have been over 2, if not 3 grant rounds for broadband infrastructure deployment. So that's the cumulative amount of awards to that internet service provider for
Okay.
expansion of the infrastructure.
All right, so that's ISP. Thank you. And then if I may, again, bouncing back and forth now, starting on page 10, a couple grants specifically to the towns of Arrowsick,
Mhm.
Vienna and Winterport. Winterport's 30,000, but more to the point,
Town owned or town owned or town primary infrastructure projects.
so there was a fairly sizable grant to either, or to both Arrowsick and Vienna in fiscal 24. And then additional to both of those towns, the one that's I'd like a little more information on is to the town of Vienna, jumping from 24 to 25 on Arrowsick. It looks like, correct me if I'm wrong, Arrowsick, sorry. The large investment, the initial large investment was in 24 and then perhaps a cleanup grant in 25 to finish the project. But the one I was curious about was town of Vienna starting at 557,000 and then a second dole of 791. What happened there?
In Vienna's case, a scope increase and contract amendment.
Okay, thank you.
Again, town owned infrastructure projects with, in Vienna's case, a increase of scope and amended award accordingly.
Do we anticipate that those projects are nearing completion?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, Arrowsick and Vienna.
Yeah.
Welcome to Maine. Yeah, we're weird. Yeah. Thank you. And again, while it's terrific information, do these match the policy and the documentation needed around the policy for administering these things? So I'm gonna count your grant. Thank you for pointing out your grant procedure that you read. And that would appear to be your contributions policy. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
I have also reached out to team to see if there, I feel like there is a more explicit contribution policy that has also been included. I want to just make sure that we're scraping the barrel.
Okay, fine. Okay, any other questions, comments, concerns regarding contribution policy? Seeing none, we will move on to travel.
All right, last up is travel, meals and entertainment policy, and the committee may wish to take a look at page 15 of your packet. Looks like it's section 8. Establishes some requirements. So you may wish to take a look at that. And once again, for this specific element, MCA wasn't asked to provide any details of expenses for travel, meals, or entertainment. So the committee's review is limited to the policy.
Okay, and so, Mr. Butcher, we will ask that same question out loud, that your MCA Board of Directors has approved the annual budget and you've continued to do the reimbursements as required by your policy.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions from any other members of the committee regarding this section? Seeing none, committee, I will ask you, do you feel like you have adequate information? If you go back to page 2, again, I think there's not inconsistencies. I just would, in fact, you've more than met them in my estimation, Mr. Butcher. It's just a gentle ask to take a look for next time, of which I will not be here. Apparently, I feel the need to remind people of that several times today.
You can still come.
Yeah,
It
it's
will be
fine. No,
fun.
no. So committee, after conducting our review of MCA, do we find any inconsistencies between their policies and procedures and the statutory requirements and reported waivers of competitive procurement or contributions out of compliance? Everybody feel good with that statement, or yes, yes? Do I have head nods on this side? Senator Harrington?
I still think we don't really have a direct policy for contributions in front of us, so probably ought to get that before we say it's okay. Just my thought.
Yeah, and I had said I was comfortable because I felt he pointed to me where he felt it was. I'm happy to wait until we get clarification from them on that particular policy. What is the pleasure of the committee? Representative Foster.
And this won't hold us up, but I just if Mr. Butcher can get back to us on that outside angle, 709,000
Yes.
question. Thanks.
So committee, what's your preference? Do you wish to wait to do that statement of results of review until we have the information from MCA on, as Senator Harrington suggested, on that particular section around contributions? Do you wish to see their confirmation of their policy before we make a determination? Reasonable, yes? Okay, so we'd be happy to do that at a future meeting. Mr. Butcher, we appreciate you taking the time to take a look for that. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate you. Lindsay, any other information regarding this particular exercise that we are doing?
No, I think the committee is in good shape. So what I will do is follow up with the Maine Municipal and Rural Electrification Cooperative Agency and Mr. Butcher to bring information back for the committee's review. And at that point, and then I'll bring some language regarding Efficiency Maine Trust, because it sounds like for that agency, you're all set. And we'll see if any questions come from that.
Sounds good. Any additional questions from the committee at this time for Lindsay or clarification? Any other business you have for us today,
I do
Lindsay?
not know language reviews. I'm sorry.
Oh, look how sad you are. With that, we will be adjourned. Thank you